All right, we're gonna do simple equations today. Chapter 1, section 1. This starts on page 5 in your textbook, so you guys will get your textbooks in a minute. Just follow along with what we're doing on this sheet. All right, so the first thing you're gonna learn is, well, you guys already know this. You learned this last year and the year before. But to solve an equation, what do you do as far as canceling things out?
The opposite.
The opposite. So if you see an addition, we subtract to get rid of the number. If you see a subtraction, we add to get rid of that number. So what do we see in this problem? Addition. Right there. So our job or our goal when we're solving an equation is to isolate the variable, in this case x. So we want to get this x all by itself on one side of the equation, on one side of the equal sign. So what number is not allowing us to do that? 22. And because you see a plus here, that means to get rid of this positive 22, we're going to subtract 22. Now, an equation is a scale. It's a balance. One side is said to be equal to the other side. They are level. In order to change one side, if I am subtracting 22 from this side, what's happening to my scale? It's now unbalanced. In order to balance that scale back out, I need to subtract 22 from the left side. And now if I do the same thing to both sides, the scale balances. That's the reason we do this. These 22s cancel. You guys should be writing this on this sheet underneath. The 22s cancel because a positive 22 minus a 22 is 0. These are called a zero pair. Okay. Pair because there's two of them. 0 because when you combine them, it gives you 0. X comes down. Now this side, you guys seem to be making a lot of mistakes doing this, so I want to clarify. This is negative 14 minus 22. Or this is negative 14 plus negative 22. These are the same thing. Negative 14 minus 22 is the same thing as negative 14 plus negative 22. So what happens when you add these? You get negative 36. This is our answer. Now how do you check your work? You plug your answer into the original equation. So instead of x plus 22 equals negative 14, we do negative 36 plus 22 equals negative 14. Negative 36 plus 22 is negative 14, which is equal to negative 14, which means that this is done correctly. Okay, here's our answer, and our answer checked out. Questions? No. Okay. This is a simple version of simple equations. They're called simple equations because there's only one step that it takes to solve the equation. We subtracted 22 from both sides, and we're done. That's why it's called simple. Not because the concept is simple, just because it's less steps. Let's look at this one. So, you guys are in Algebra 1, fractions and decimals, and you're going to be dealing with pi today as well. These are going to be things you see all the time, so let's go ahead and take our time on this problem. The process doesn't change because it's a fraction. The only thing that changes is when we add or subtract or multiply and divide, we have to know how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide fractions. Okay. Imagine this was just d minus 4 equals negative 2. What would I do to both sides?
Plus 4.
I would add 4. So now we know 4 is not 4, we know it's 1/4. So it doesn't change what we add. This is plus 1/4 on both sides. Yes?
If you wanted to, could you turn them into decimals and just...
Yes, but don't do that because when you have a fraction like 1/3, you cannot change it to a decimal because it's a repeating decimal and it's not going to help you. So if I show you how to do this, you can do this with all fractions. Okay? So this will work 100% of the time, whereas the way you're talking about only works most of the time. All right. And sometimes you get really long decimals you don't feel like dealing with, and then you have to put your answer as a fraction anyways, and it gets complicated, okay? All right, so 1/4 and negative 1/4, these are a zero pair, they cancel. D comes down. Now, if this was just -2 and +4, we could just do that in our head, but this is a fraction with an unlike denominator, so we have a little bit of scratch work to do. What is -1/2 plus 1/4? We can't add them in their current form. We have to find a common denominator. So what is the least common denominator between 2 and 4?
8.
We could go to 8, but that's not the least. 4 is the least. 4 goes into 4, 2 goes into 4, right? They both go into 8 also. Your way would work, so you have to simplify it. All right, so I need to change both of these. Well, I need to change the first one. The second one can stay the same, 1/4. The 1/2 goes from -1/2 into negative how many fourths? 2/4. All right, so if I change 2 to 4, what happened? I multiplied by 2, right? So that I have to multiply the numerator by 2. So 1 times 2 is 2. -2/4 plus 1/4. When we're adding fractions, you ignore the denominator, okay? What is -2 plus 1? -1 over 4. So our answer is -1/4. Now I'm not going to check all these problems. When you're taking the test, you should save your check work. So you would check all of your equations at the end if you have time left over for the test. So always do the problems and then go back and check your work. Because if you spend time checking every single problem, you're not going to have enough time to finish the test. Okay? Especially with PSAT. All right, here's our answer. All right, questions on these two? C. So what does C look like?
And plus 4.8
Equals
9.2.
Okay, what's different about this one?
It has an
Decimals instead of fractions. Now the good thing about decimals is they're much easier than fractions, especially if we have a calculator. You just plug them in and hit enter, right? All right, so what is the process here? What do we do to both sides in order to get our variable by itself? Minus 4.8. Okay. The 4.8 and the negative 4.8 cancel. M comes down. Now 9.2 minus 4.8. Plug that into your calculators. What is it? 4.4. And we're done. All right, last one. D. Okay, read it for me.
P minus 6 pi equals 2 pi.
Okay. Yeah, so think of this as just one thing. Okay? This is one thing, this is one thing. These are like terms because they both have a pi. Right. So ignore the pi for a second. If this was just p minus 6 equals 2, what would I do to both sides?
Add
I
6.
would add 6. But we're not going to add 6, we're going to add 6 pi. If you have 6 pi's and you subtract 6 pi's, how many pi's do you have? 0 pi's. No pi's. All right, so these are 0 pairs. Okay, if you have 2 pi's and you're adding 6 pi's, we have 8 pi's. And we're done.
So we don't have to multiply the pi.
Correct. So in algebra, it is easier to leave pi as a symbol than it is to actually use the decimal expansion of that number. So this is called, write this down, This is called leaving your answer in terms of pi. So in a direction set, so say you have a problem with involving pi, it'll either tell you to round your answer or it'll say leave your answer in terms of pi. When it says leave your answer in terms of pi, it means leave it as a symbol, don't multiply it throughout. Okay? Now, if it said round to the nearest tenth, we would do 8 times 3.14, and we would round that to the nearest tenth. Okay? All right. Question?